Bienvenue à tous. Welcome to Reporters Plus on France 24, the big picture on world events and global issues. I'm Mark Owen. In this edition, star-crossed love in Senegal. Meeting your true love is, of course, a joyful moment, but when that person belongs to a different social caste, it creates a catalogue of problems. Some people make a stand and literally follow their heart. Some end up being victimised, or even worse. One woman says she was actually poisoned by her mother-in-law-to-be because she was unhappy her son was marrying beneath himself. Yes, a caste system still exists, and the people on high use it to protect their own and keep the others down. Even the former president of the country was caught on camera insulting his successor because of his so-called lower caste origins. But there are many people who say, enough of this divisive, shameful system. Senegalese people should be equal and free, most of all, to follow their hearts. But can love conquer all? Our film starts with the story of Kadi and Masamba, two young people in Dakar whose love recognised no caste system.
Every evening, the young people of Dakar engage in their favourite ritual. Jogging, bending, stretching. As soon as the heat of the sun subsides, it's muscle time.
Hey, you call yourself a wrestler?
But sports are not Khadi's thing. She only has eyes for her man, Massamba. For her, evening is a time for lovers. Well, almost.
He's a really cool guy. I found my ideal man in him. He arrived and he said, "Khady, I love you." And I laughed. I didn't answer him. Then he asked me again, "What's your name?" Then he joked, "My mother's called Khady too. From now on, I'll call you Mama."
6 years ago, Massamba was a driver. He worked hard and only went out to indulge in his sole passion, wrestling. Then, a friend suggested introducing him to his neighbour, Khady, who was single.
I came back 2 or 3 days later. We sat and talked. I told her I loved her and that I wasn't there to chat her up. I told her what I appreciated in life and what I didn't. She said she wasn't going to commit herself on what I said, but she was ready to give it a try and we'd see.
The two young people saw each other for several months, always in the presence of friends, as was only proper. Then they decided to get married. That's when their families decided to become involved in their romance, for the sake of tradition.
When he introduced me to his family, there was no problem. But his parents started to make inquiries once we began to make wedding plans. And then the problem started.
Inquiries revealed to Massamba's parents that Khady belonged to a caste that was considered inferior, whereas Massamba was descended from a noble line. Tradition was against their union. In Senegal, you do not trifle with genealogy. You are either born noble or into a lower caste. These labels are inherited from birth, according to the work of your ancestors. Castes stratify the whole of society, including affairs of the heart. In the artisans' village, people have carried on the same activities for generations. Cobblers, tanners, sculptors, they all belong to the large Nyenyo caste, the caste of the manual trades. Abdoulaye Thiam is the representative of the jewelers. Right from the greeting ritual, any person he's speaking to knows he's from a lower caste.
Kasemabo. I say to him, Kasemabo. He says to me, Tiam Bailo. Tiam Bailo means Tiam, the jeweler. Once you're in a certain caste, then you stay forever in that caste.
Even if you change trades, you can't escape your caste. 95% of the people in Senegal share 300 family names, so it does not take long to place someone in the social hierarchy. In the past, banning marriage between castes protected access to these trade corporations. It was a way of preventing competition. Over the centuries, endogamy became the norm.
Generally, when you're a Nyenyo, you prefer to marry someone from your own caste so that the whole thing goes smoothly, rather than marrying someone else and having to integrate them into your family and find afterwards that their ways are incompatible. It's someone who'll have the impression of being in the wrong place, so to speak, because there's a different way of doing things, of seeing things.
So, to avoid any awkwardness, Mr. Thiam married a woman of the jeweler's caste, like himself. But for Massamba the noble, there is no awkwardness concerning Khady. Even if she belongs to the caste of Griot, the singer-musician's caste. Between the two of them, there is just love.
Asu, where's the cup? Can you give me a drop of water?
He could not care less about these caste problems, perhaps because he was born Yer, or noble, at the top of the social hierarchy. His ancestors had land, livestock, and power in the region of Luga. The young man was simply dumbfounded when his family went against his idea of marrying Khady.
They said, she's a folk singer and you are nobility. You can't marry her. When there are festivities, she comes to sing and you give her money. A typical Senegal story. I told them I wanted to choose my wife myself. My father said, I chose the wives for all your older brothers.
They had fixed ideas about me, but they were wrong.
They thought that women like her didn't know how to run their household.
They don't know how to run their household, they don't come to the village, and they're only interested in money.
Centuries of preconceived ideas to overcome. To convince his parents, Massamba made them understand that he was ready to break off relations not with Khady, but with them. The threat was exposed by a subtle provocation that his parents immediately understood.
That morning, I got up and sat outside my bedroom. I took out a cigarette. My father looked at me. He'd never seen me smoke. Afterwards, when they'd gone, they certainly talked amongst themselves. They all got together. They said, if we don't have a serious word with him, we're going to lose him. That's when they called me and asked me what was going on. I told them, what I want is not what you want, so let me choose my way of life, and I'll live with the consequences. The animals have nothing to eat. Hurry up and go and buy them some food.
In Senegal, smoking in front of one's parents is a sign of total disrespect. For Massamba, it was a way of showing his family that their opinion no longer mattered.
I knew I had to go through with it.
The youngest of 19 siblings, he knew that his parents would not want to lose the baby of the family. Marriage, a game of strategy. In family matters, one caste plays a central role, the griot. Abdul Aziz Mbai comes from a family of these great traditional communicators, the more modern name for them.
When there's going to be a marriage, the in-laws have to know the suitor's family. Generally, they're not the sort of people who want to make such investigations. So the griot, who knows all about the family trees of many of his fellow citizens, can easily recognize or get to know about this suitor who wants to marry their daughter. Right from the start, he's at the heart of everything that happens throughout the marriage.
Guardians of their fellow citizens' genealogies, the griots stick to their role, and some of them to the caste system.
It's highly preferable for marriages to be between people of the same caste, for fear of being snubbed or belittled by the other side. Just as, throughout the world, people want to find thoroughbreds among animals, for example. They want men of the same caste who make their parents proud. And they don't get turned down very often.
To cope with this attitude, Massamba knew that he had to count on the support of Khady's family.
How's it going?
Mas, how are you?
And especially on the support of the young woman's father. Abdoulaye Seck, for tradition, belongs to the griot caste, but on all official documents, he's a director of human resources. A bureaucrat who, as he says, does not know how to beat the drum. Presently unemployed, he has a very big family to support. For him, it was important to find a reliable son-in-law, whatever his caste.
One day, Khady came and told me that Mas was here, and that he was her lover. Okay. What's your name, Mas? He said, Mas Nyong. We introduced ourselves, and I said to him, what are your intentions right now? If you've come here to mess around, you can just leave straight away. But if you've come here to take a wife, then I'll give you my blessing. I'm ready. I have no problems with castes. It's a false problem. It doesn't exist. We're all equal.
As a patriarch, Abdoulaye is aware of the seriousness of the threat of the break between Massamba and his family.
The family is sacred. When there's a breakup in the family, you always have to try to glue the pieces together again. To take your thread and try to weave the tears together.
Why is the family so important?
Well, the family is very important because the family is wealth. That is to say, when I can't afford something, he, my brother, can afford it for me.
The state doesn't give anything?
No, no. Really, if you rely on the state, you'll die. When you have no work, if you haven't got someone to help you, you'll be out of work till you die. That's for sure. There's no assistance. There's nothing at all.
In fact, since he's been unemployed, his brothers have been helping him to support the 30 people who depend upon him. In return for a promise of security, many young people accept that their families interfere in their romances. Did you know that, Khady? That you couldn't go against your father's advice?
If I hadn't agreed for you to marry Mas, would you have obeyed me? Huh? She said yes. She said yes. She'd be obliged to say yes. Come rain, snow, or wind, she'll accept. Oh, yeah.
A somewhat equivocal yes on Khady's part. griot takes the opportunity to sing the praises of the lovers. Here, everybody knows that Massamba and Khady have married against all the odds, in spite of the opposition of the young man's family. They also know that time has lowered the tensions. Accepting young people's choices. Not all in-laws have this wisdom. Awa also had the misfortune of not falling in love with the right boy. She is a noble, but her ex was considered low caste. Her prospective mother-in-law violently rejected this marriage, to the point of resorting to methods that were somewhat unorthodox.
One day, she found out her son wanted to marry me. She started to do things, mystical things, to separate me from her son. That day, his mother brought me a bowl of soup or something. I started to eat it, then I began vomiting. I vomited and vomited, and I was ill for 2 days. I saw a Marabu. He said, "You've eaten something you shouldn't have."
Something that was poisoned? A curse?
Yes. She put a curse on me. 2 months later, I started to hate the guy. He didn't do anything wrong to me. He's a nice, cool guy, but the curse worked.
Now, 5 years later, the young woman is raising the boy born of their union on her own. A little boy who has already inherited his father's caste, the father whose name he carries.
I know my son will have these problems too when he wants to take a wife, because he's from a low caste. The day he wants to take a wife, maybe the girl's family will turn him down. It's ruined my life. That's why I don't want to fall in love anymore. I don't even want to think about love. It's too painful.
To avoid caste diktats, some Senegalese have found a radical solution. Yoff, a former fishing village in the Dakar suburbs, is the headquarters of the Layen, a Muslim brotherhood founded at the end of the 19th century by a local preacher and his son. His portrait decorates the village walls. The community comprises nearly 700,000 Senegalese, about 6% of the population. It is the only brotherhood in the country that has made the eradication of the caste system a founding principle. For one of the leaders, Mr. Diop, the battle begins by getting rid of the first exterior sign of caste, the family name.
Seydina Limamou Laye advised us that for greetings, we should use the term Lai, which is derived from the name of God, to get away from the family names that uphold social inequality. And to make a clean sweep of all that, we all greet each other with Lai, Lai. If we greet each other with names like we see others do, they'll make distinctions right away. Someone will feel that he's better, higher placed than someone else, when in fact, we are all equal before Adam and Eve.
The two young people are henceforth called Lai when greeting. They married 2 years ago. Here, the question of caste is not raised.
It's not a problem here. We're free of all that. A lot of people believe in castes, but they don't exist among the Layen. My wife's family don't go along with it either.
Even before I became a Layen, I said to my mother, if I love someone, I won't care if he's from a low caste or if he's noble. I'll marry him anyway.
Friday, the great day of prayer. Dressed in white, the symbol of purity, the faithful converge towards the mosque.
Hey, my friend. Did you get my mail?
Yes, I got it.
Ah, Lai.
Lay.
How are you?
In theory, the egalitarian precepts of Islam are incompatible with castes. In practice, however, most Senegalese brotherhoods have accepted their existence, many of the religious leaders being of noble lineage. The egalitarianism of the Layen is an exception.
How can you categorize one certain part of the population by making some of them nobles and putting others in a low caste? It makes no sense. Men and women have joined the Layen community because of that peculiarity, because there's no restriction.
Castes not only intrude into the love life of the Senegalese, they also sometimes make their presence felt in the political field. In February 2015, former President Abdoulaye Wade caused a scandal. During a press conference, he referred to his successor, Macky Sall, as the son of a slave.
He's descended from slaves. He was taken out of his village. The villagers took him out. His parents were cannibals. They ate babies. I'd never agree for him to put himself above me.
An attack from a bygone age designed to undermine authority. Many Senegalese were shocked. Even if some people admit that the history of the ancestors still plays a role.
You know, in Africa, genealogy is a fact of life. Sometimes you respect someone or you don't because of his family tree. Even though, in principle, by going to school, you can rise to a certain level of responsibility. Sometimes it is that very family tree, which is not, in fact, a problem for the person concerned, that can, in many ways, deprive him of a certain esteem from other people.
In fact, belonging to a caste was for a long time a barrier against coming to power. Even if things are changing, Senegal has, for example, never elected a president from a low caste. For the journalists of the daily paper Sud, castes remain a discrete but ever-present fact in politics.
Omar Diaw, have you anything to say about the front page?
On the front page today, the paper is concerned about the level of philosophy in the country. The managing editor comes from the Casamance, an enclave where castes do not exist. He speaks about them all the more readily, well, almost.
Sud has always been a newspaper for intellectuals. We dare to tackle questions like this one, the question of the place of philosophy. You won't come across that in the public arena.
Have you ever dealt with issues linked to the caste system?
Not this year, no, not yet. But I remember that a few years ago, if I'm not mistaken, it was I myself who did a report on the subject. But I must say that it's a taboo subject. Even politicians, when you question them on the subject, they prefer to say things off the record. When they're all together, in the corridors, they say things like, such and such a person, if it was yesterday, if it was in our tradition, they wouldn't even dare talk to me. That's what you get from politicians. That's what they say. It's thought that low caste people have a sort of jinx. They're people that, even when you give them a chance, often, most of the time, things don't work out because they're low caste.
In the suburban neighborhood of Pekin, castes are the last thing on young people's minds. By marrying the girl he loved against all odds, Massamba gained the respect of many.
These are my friends. We sit here together to drink tea and have a chat. When we have a spare moment.
For Massamba and his friends, it is time Senegal learned to live without castes.
So-and-so is griot and so-and-so is noble. You don't see that anywhere else. We're starting to take the mystery out of it. People are waking up. The good Lord says if two people love each other, they should marry. End of story.
Today, with globalization, money tends to remove caste distinctions in the country. On the one hand, there are the poor. On the other, the rich. Is this the beginning of freedom for lovers? Or just the beginning of another form of servitude?
Our report was by Anne Lusuan in Senegal. See it again, of course, via our website, france24.com. This is Reporters Plus. Thank you for watching, and always remember to follow your heart.